I want to speak about female narcissists who generally present in the same way as male narcissists, but of course because they are women, they come over in a slightly different way, so it's presented in a slightly different way and covered up in a slightly different way as well. So today I want to just speak about those aspects of the female narcissist that are very similar to the male narcissist. So the lack of empathy, the initial charm phase, I call it the initial drawing in phase, where we're shown a persona rather than the real person, and that persona is not an authentic one and can be presented for quite a considerable amount of time, which is why it's quite important for us to maintain an objective and an observer stance in our initial engagement with people, so that we can maintain our integrity until we know and we trust this person. But of course our integrity is to be maintained throughout any relationship anyway. But importantly in the initial stages, where possibly because of what's happening in the dynamic, which can be quite overwhelming with a narcissist, because we're often overwhelmed so that we're not consciously aware of what's going on, which is why often the ego is targeted with flattery and what have you, so that we're not, we sort of throw away our conscious awareness because we're so tied up with how this person is making us feel, rather than looking at the big picture and expanding our awareness as far as why this person may be acting in the way they are. And are they acting authentically? And is this really who they are? Or is this a facade? And the real person will peek through over time. But possibly that may not be, that switch may not happen until a commitment has been made and until they have got what they want. So a female narcissist can be just as charming, just as flirtatious, just as sexy as a male narcissist, and present themselves as someone who is your ideal, perfect partner, if you will. They may not come across as perfection itself, but they may come across as being exactly what you need. And they may find that out in the initial stages where they ask questions, or where just being with you, they can identify the sort of partner that you want and the sort of dynamic that you want, which may switch, as I say, after a commitment. And that commitment could be engagement, it could be marriage, it could be sleeping with them, or any type of commitment. So the female narcissist presents in a very ideal way, just as the male narcissist does. But there are some indications that we can look for, and there are some tools we can use. One of those tools is spiritual discernment, and that is keeping in touch with what you're sensing on another level in here, and the sort of feelings that are coming up, but you may be brushing aside, such as questions like, is this person real? Or is there a feeling that there's a bit of a fakeness coming through? Or are they being really real and down to earth? And also, are you seeing their negative traits? Because none of us are perfect, but are you actually seeing the other side of them? Or is all this perfection seeming like too good to be true? So in the beginning, you may not obviously realise who this person is, because that's the point on them staying on the down low, is that the man or the woman or whoever it is, or it could be whole groups of people, do not understand who this person is. And especially if they continue to operate covertly in an organisation or a family or a marriage, then they're used to operating covertly, where they manipulate people in such a way that one person sees one side of them and the rest of the group doesn't see anything. And that person is usually the partner, who may suspect, because they've been the closest one to them, that there's something not right with this person, and that even they are extremely damaging and dangerous, which could be the case at the end of the day. Often when you've been drawn into the dynamic and can no longer come out for whatever reason. So often with a narcissistic person, the dynamic will be set up whereby the partner does most of the work and does most of the giving. And on an emotional and psychological and soul level, there is not the intimacy that one would hope in the relationship, because often these people are not capable of that type of intimacy, that real deep soul connection, that real deep contribution to the dynamic of a healthy relationship is often not there. It's often led on a very much more shallow level. And quite often with narcissistic people, there is competition that rears its head somewhere along the line, whereby the person is envious of the partner in some way. And so you may see some underhand sort of covert operating there, because the woman is jealous. And quite often she can be jealous of other women. And that will be played out in her behaviour, which again may be very covert. You may not know about it actually. So it's quite a good idea when, for a man or anyone meeting a woman really, is to, as I say, trust your spiritual awareness and discernment and use discretion, but also to speak to the female friends and just have a look at her relationships with her female friends, because often if there's envy and what have you, there can be trouble along the way as far as her attitude to the feminine in general, and also take a look at her attitude to the masculine as well. So it's very fluid and can be quite manipulative. So it's these issues with narcissists in general, whatever their gender, can be complex, I think is a good word to use, and which is why we need to be objectively observing in the beginning and have a great deal of knowledge and understanding and experience, so that in the initial stages we pick up on red flags early, and we have the power and the confidence to be able to move out of these situations, whether that's a man or a woman, so that we can take care of ourselves and protect our future, and especially our happiness. So I've mentioned no empathy, which is there is a lack of deep, authentic love and care for other people, which is peculiar to narcissism. And that care and love does come through in the narcissistic dynamic as being lacking this true, authentic empathy for others. And also, after the relationship has been established, in other words, they know, they're secure, they're in the relationship, and the switch occurs, there's quite a high degree of control and dominance that they want. And that's done in a number of ways, through control and manipulation, in order to establish a foundation, if you will, whereby they have a good deal of control in the dynamics. And one of the things I've observed in looking at men with narcissistic women and looking at women with narcissistic men is that there tends to be quite a degree of hypnotism, as if they've been hypnotized and can't see their partner in a clear light. And I think this is to do with the merging process that happens in an intimate relationship. Whereas someone who is a little bit more distant tends not to be so intimately hypnotized by the partner because they've got more objectivity. So these are the same dynamics that present with the male narcissist as well. Control, dominance, lack of empathy, have a great deal of difficulty understanding where the other person is coming from and being in that person's shoes. And the lack of deep intimacy, this is the thing. There's a shallowness to these relationships and these people, which is very much on the surface. And I think this is why there seems to be quite a lot of materialism. They like the material, they like perfection, they like beauty. They like to point out where someone's wrong, criticism of that imperfection, even though their own persona, which they're not really in touch with their own selves, true selves, authentically, is criticised in other people. So that's projection. So there's a lot of projection going on. All the same types of dynamics you will see with a male narcissist as well. So key here is equipping ourselves with as much information, knowledge as possible, not going into denial as far as, well, that's never going to happen to me, I'm never going to meet one of those types of people, because chances are you've already met them, but they may have just floated through your life without you being aware of it. And to equip ourselves, tool up with information, be aware, don't go into relationships with denial, and to stand back and be an observer initially, so that we keep our safe relationship training toolbox equipped and we know what we're doing every step of the way. So as always, stay safe and very happy. Bye bye.